Hello everybody, my name is Valentin and I want to take you back in time. Let's journey together to a period in history known as the First World War. It was a time of great upheaval, a time when the world was at war with itself. Imagine a world before the internet, before airplanes filled the skies. This was a time when horses still pulled artillery, and soldiers marched into battle with rifles and bayonets. The First World War, also known as the Great War, raged from 1914 to 1918. It was a global conflict that engulfed Europe and spread to other parts of the world. Millions of soldiers from different countries were mobilized to fight in this devastating war. The world had never seen anything like it before, and the scars of this conflict would shape the century to come. You might wonder, how did this terrible war begin? Well, it wasn't just one single event. Europe in the early 20th century was like a powder keg waiting to explode. There were many complex factors at play, simmering beneath the surface of everyday life. One major cause was the rise of nationalism. Nationalism is a powerful force. It's the love for your country and the belief that your nation is superior to others. This led to competition and rivalry between nations. Another cause was imperialism. European powers were competing for colonies around the world, which caused tension and mistrust. Lastly, a complex web of alliances formed between nations. These alliances meant that if one country went to war, others would be obligated to join them. The spark that ignited the powder keg happened in Sarajevo in 1914. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, was assassinated along with his wife. This assassination set off a chain reaction. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia for the assassination and declared war. Then, because of the alliances, other countries were pulled into the conflict. Germany, allied with Austria-Hungary, declared war on Russia and France, who were allied with Serbia. Great Britain, obligated by its treaty with Belgium, declared war on Germany when Germany invaded Belgium to attack France. Within a month, most of Europe was at war. What began as a regional conflict in the Balkans had exploded into a global war. World War I introduced a new kind of warfare: trench warfare. Imagine miles of trenches dug into the ground, stretching across the battlefields of France and Belgium. Soldiers lived in these trenches, often in mud and squalor, enduring constant shelling and the threat of enemy attack. New technologies like machine guns and poison gas made the war even more deadly and horrific. The machine gun, capable of firing hundreds of rounds per minute, turned battlefields into killing fields. Poison gas, a terrifying new weapon, was used to deadly effect, causing agonizing death and injury. Tanks, another new invention, lumbered across the battlefields, but their impact was limited in the early stages of the war. The advancements in technology were supposed to make war quicker, but instead, they made it much more deadly and brutal. Section 5. Stories from the Front. Letters from a Lost Generation. The war touched the lives of millions. Imagine young men, barely old enough to shave, leaving their families and homes to fight for their countries. Many of them never returned. Those who did often came back physically or mentally scarred. They were forever changed by the horrors they had witnessed. One such young man was a soldier named John. He wrote letters home to his sweetheart Mary, describing the mud, the fear, and the camaraderie of the trenches. John's letters, like those of countless other soldiers, provide a glimpse into the human cost of the war. These letters are poignant reminders of the sacrifices made by an entire generation. Section 6. The Armistice, a world exhausted, a war to end, all wars. After 4 long years of bloody conflict, an armistice was signed on November 11, 1918. The guns fell silent. The world rejoiced, but the cost of victory was immense. Millions lay dead, entire cities were in ruins. The war had ravaged Europe, leaving behind a legacy of grief, destruction, and disillusionment. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, officially ended the war. It blamed Germany for the war and imposed harsh penalties on the defeated nation. These penalties included the loss of territory, disarmament, and crippling reparations payments. Many historians believe that the Treaty of Versailles, with its punitive measures, contributed to the outbreak of World War II just 2 decades later. Section 7. Scars on the World. The war's bitter harvest. The First World War had profound consequences that shaped the 20th century. The war resulted in the collapse of empires. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Russian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and the German Empire all crumbled under the weight of the war. New countries were formed, and the political map of Europe was redrawn. The war also led to the rise of new ideologies, including communism in Russia and fascism in Italy and Germany. The devastation of the war and the economic hardship that followed created fertile ground for extremist movements to take root. The world was a different place after the Great War, forever marked by the conflict. Section 8. Remembering the Fallen Memorials and Monuments. In the aftermath of the war, memorials and monuments were erected in countries around the world to honor the millions who died, and the countless others whose lives were forever changed. These memorials stand as solemn reminders of the devastating consequences of war. They serve as places of remembrance and reflection. One of the most iconic memorials is the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. It serves as a powerful symbol of the sacrifices made by all soldiers who fought in the war. The Tomb of the Unknown Soldier reminds us that the true cost of war is measured in human lives. Section 9. Echoes of the Great War, the World Today. The First World War may seem like a distant event, but its echoes can still be felt today. The geopolitical landscape of the world, the rise of global powers, and the international organizations we have today are all, in some way, a consequence of the events of the Great War. We must remember the lessons of the First World War. We must strive for peace and understanding between nations. We must work together to solve conflicts peacefully. The First World War was a tragedy that should never be repeated. It stands as a stark warning to future generations of the devastating consequences of unchecked nationalism, unchecked militarism, and unchecked hatred.